Welcome to the Wilmac Wire. I'm Emily Miller, joined by my co-host, Steve McDonnell. On this show, we talk with the drivers, the leaders, innovators, and decision makers pushing customer interaction technology and AI forward. And because we're proud to call Western New York home, we also spotlight the drivers in our own community, the people and organizations shaping growth and innovation right here. Let's get into it. Steve, good morning.
Good morning. Glad to be here.
How does it officially feel to be a co-host on the Wilmac Wire?
I'm excited. I figured the day would come where I'd be a co-host of a podcast with everything going out. Didn't know it happened so soon, but pumped up and ready to have some solid guests and some solid conversations.
Yeah, speaking of solid guests, solid conversations, today's episode, we're going to chat with Ian Mortimer from Golisano Institute. You and I both know he's the president, but for our audience, just as a reference. Before we jump into our interview with him, what are your thoughts on him and the Institute? What are you excited to chat with him about?
Yeah, well, I think what the Institute is doing is game-changing, not only in Rochester, but probably in the United States. Tom Golisano, a legend in capitalism, but definitely in Rochester, but nationally, the founder of Paychex has really came up with a great idea. I think it's needed in the atmosphere that we're in today with education being so much money. Our society has generally been told you have to go get a college degree or you're not going to amount to anything. Between all that and now entry-level jobs being much more difficult to get because everyone has these degrees. AI coming out, it's pretty well known, and I believe it that in the next 3 to 5 years, a lot of entry-level jobs are going to be taken. It's already happening. So I think with all that combination, having an entrepreneur institution that teaches practical skill sets is important. Not only practical skill sets, but in less of a time frame and for less money, including sales, which I think I'll definitely ask him a few questions on that. That generally isn't taught at universities, even though 20% of people are going into jobs like that. So I'm pumped to talk to him. I think we've been a part of it, that institution partnering with them. So seeing it live has been cool, but to kind of get his opinions on where the institution is going and kind of higher ed in general will be pretty cool. What about you?
Yeah, I agree. Ian's a rock solid person. This has been my first introduction to him through the Golisano Institute and a lot of the great folks over there who came from higher ed. So I think they come from that world that you're talking about and seeing how it's been evolving and changing and are bringing kind of the takeaways to how they formulate it. And we've seen how fast they can get over there in an accredited institution. So yeah, I'm excited to chat with Ian and kind of see what he has to say about that. So with that being said, we'll turn it over to the interview. Sound good?
Awesome. Let's go.
All right, today's guest is Mr. Ian Mortimer. Actually, I should say doctor, something I learned when reading about it.
It's optional.
So Ian is the founding president of the Golisano Institute for Business and Entrepreneurship. We're going to dig a little bit more into what the Golisano Institute is about in today's conversation, but from a very high level. It's an accelerated and radically pragmatic post-secondary institution focused on business, and specifically funded by philanthropist Tom Golisano, as you can tell by the name. But before launching the Institute, Ian, he held senior leadership roles at RIT, Nazareth University, and at Champlain College. And earlier in his career, he worked in technology and consulting, another thing I did not know. And then to add on to that, Ian holds degrees from St. Bonaventure, an MBA from RIT, and a doctorate from Drexel University. That's why I called him doctor. And last but certainly not least, he lives in Pittsburgh with his wife and 3 sons. So we got a boy dad on the call and Steve is a girl dad. So we're in good company here, nice and balanced. Ian, thanks for joining us on the Wilmac Wire.
Good to be here. Thank you so much. Thanks, Steve.
Yeah, of course. Um, all right. So we mentioned right off the bat, you're the founding president of Golisano Institute, with more than 2 decades in higher education leadership. How have those experiences shaped your approach to building the school?
Um, they've shaped my experiences mostly by giving me the industry knowledge that needed to happen before you could really innovate and build something new. So in working in consulting and technology for about 12 years and then 20 years in higher education, you know, I did the functional work in education for a long time and, always tried to innovate within it. But, it's one of those things that is very deep rooted in terms of practice and foundation and regulatory environment and market dynamics. I mean, it's a complicated industry, education. Um, and so, without that experience, I could have never, created, with my colleagues, the Golisano Institute. It helped kind of frame what works well and what doesn't work well. And that was kind of the impetus of trying to figure out how do we build a new model with Tom Golisano's, kind of direction, vision as an input into that.
How, how did you get set up with Tom, Ian?
Yeah, so about 3.5 years ago, Tom did a tour of visiting all of the colleges and universities in the area. And so he met with the presidents of RIT, U of R, Nazareth, Fisher, Geneseo, pick your school, MCC. And so his goal was to help him understand what he didn't know about post-secondary education. And he also was very sensitive to the idea that he wanted to sprout the idea that he's thinking about starting a new entrant into the category regionally. And just to make sure there was any hard feelings, he didn't see something that he should be seeing, etc. And so he came to RIT, and I was invited to be in the conversation with Tom because I managed kind of our continuing education division at RIT. And so by nature of that, I was leading kind of the alternative post-secondary education department at RIT. And so I was invited into the room. And, Tom talked about a lot of the things in that conversation that were, I saw very clearly problematic. He talked about the amount of time that we ask individuals to dedicate to getting trained or educated on a particular topic. And he also, mentioned very eloquently that if he was going to pursue this, that he was going to underwrite the majority of the costs. And in my work at RIT, which is a wonderful institution, I'm a graduate, I got my MBA there, but I also have very clear sight lines into, the realities of higher ed, and that is a lot of students go, and not as many graduate as we would like, and they also incur a lot of debt, in that process. And student debt is nothing more than a bet on future earnings. And when you don't get the credential that allows you to get those earnings, then it can be pretty catastrophic for a lot of people. And I had spent so much time doing that work that I always had this pit in my gut, about I know that I'm helping a lot of people, but I think I'm also hurting a lot of people as well by being good at driving enrollments, independent if they could afford it, or independent of having true knowledge if they were prepared. And so I was optimistic when Tom was talking about this, and he caught on to that immediately. And as we were exiting the room, he took his family office's business card, and he wrote his name on it and his phone number. And as we were walking out, he goes, "Hey, if you have any questions, give me a call." I've never met Tom Golisano in my life, and I was awestruck, obviously, about being in the room with him. And he's a legend of capitalism. I mean, he's
Yeah.
in Rochester, particularly, it's George Eastman and him, and so I took it away, and I was flattered. And he had an advisory group set up after this meetings, and he asked if I would sit in on it. And the advisory group were mostly his family and friends, And then there was a couple of us from higher ed that he invited to be in on it. And so I just kind of started sharing my perspective and helping, I think, help him frame a little bit. Still not under the understanding I would join it, but just kind of helping move it along. And, one thing led to another, and it kind of happened.
Yeah, I always enjoy hearing that story. Um, so obviously Tom was involved in kind of that initial vision for the college. How has he continued to stay involved? Like I know I see he has an office like every time
Yep.
we're at Golisano Institute, but can you expand on that more?
Yeah, and maybe I can take it and explain the things that he were table stakes and non-negotiables, and then how they evolved a little bit. So when he was conceptualizing this, he cared about the following. One is that it had to be 12 months, and as in terms of a schedule. And the reason that he felt strongly about that is that he feels in the current system, students lose momentum by taking 2.5 years off. He said he saw it in his own, grandkids, and he hears that constantly. And so he wanted to make sure that we would not be inefficient in our delivery of business education and all that goes into it by having big gaps of starts and stops. So no matter what we did, that had to be a part of it. He also thinks, and he's right, that the fall spring term structure was created when we were an agrarian society, and that a lot of young people worked on farms, and so you can't work on farms if you're in school, and that was the whole beginning of the framework for it. So that was a big part of it. And then he cared deeply that the following were included in the curriculum. He didn't say that you had to do it this way or you had to structure it like this, but he wanted to make sure that there was at least 2 courses on entrepreneurship, and not so much that people would be building businesses, but they would understand the mindset of an entrepreneur, which is how he lives his life. The second is that he felt adamantly and feels adamantly that sales should be incorporated into the curriculum, in that no other business school that he did research on has courses in sales as a formal discipline. And so we were required to have that embedded in it. And then he felt strongly about the basics of accounting, not so much from an audit perspective, but accounting is a mechanism to be innovative, and accounting is a mechanism that allows you to be entrepreneurially minded. Accounting is a mechanism to be quick in terms of how you evaluate a company by looking at a balance sheet and being able to determine kind of the strength of the weaknesses, looking at a financial statement, identifying if revenue is truly coming from sales or if it's coming from other auxiliary operations. And so kind of the nuts and bolts of those 3 things had to be built into it. Once those were laid down, then we had some latitude, and we constantly included him in the process about things that we felt were important, particularly as the world was changing, and a lot of that is technology, courses. So every student does a coding course in Python. Every student has 2 courses in data visualization and business analytics. Every student has a course in project management. And the thesis is that in an economy that will only become more automated, more algorithmic driven, more impacted by AI, those 4 courses are foundational as foundational as accounting and finance and sales and all those other pieces. And then we also had the belief that if we're really going to prepare people for the work environment, they had to have a lot of reps in the work environment. And so all students do at least 3 internships within the 8-quarter, 2-year program. And that has proven to be very, very wise. The last thing I'll say is that in terms of another reason that why many of us got involved in this is that there was the facts around debt and not college completion. And then there's also the harsh facts about underemployment for those who actually do complete and have a business degree. And the data is pretty damning in that when you do have a bachelor's degree, particularly in management or business or something non-specialized, even marketing, underemployment is north of 50%, meaning that you typically don't enter a job that requires a bachelor's degree. And so if we were going to kind of change the tide on that data point as well, we had to be very, very focused on getting students in work environments, pretending that when they come to school, it is a work environment And that was also a big part of what we do and how we do it.
Ian, that was just a ton of great information, and I had like 5 questions teed up. So I'll start with, and a lot of that is pretty, near and dear to my heart too. As I'm coming from Rochester, we're trying to employ a lot of young people and seeing, the pros and cons of higher ed right now. One of the
Yep.
things that you spoke about was, you could say Tom is really pushing practical courses
Yep.
as opposed to courses that kind of involve theory, which I think a lot of universities kind of push the kids to. And with that practicality, I would say sales is something, and I'll repeat it, near and dear to my heart, obviously. And I never took a sales class in college. I don't think I knew of any sales classes in college. And yet, when I got out of college, 50% of my friends were getting thrown into some sort of sales job. And I always thought that was interesting. I still think sales is a great job. It requires a lot of training. It's a job that you can make a significant income earlier on in your career, as opposed to a lot of jobs. But it's also obviously a quota-driven job where it's not, you're guaranteed. Can you speak to how that is going? I think it's great. I still don't know any other universities doing it. So that is one of the great things I think you guys are doing over there. Is I'll ask you a few more questions around what
Yeah.
you just spoke to.
Yeah.
But can you talk about how the sales classes are going?
Absolutely. And to add to your comments in terms of why it's important, particularly for a young professional, and Tom says this all the time, is that when you enter into an organization entry level as a sales associate or a sales professional, you're forced to learn the whole enterprise fast. Like if you don't understand how product management works, you don't understand how services work, you don't understand how billing works, you're not going to be good at sales. And so it's almost like, being thrown in the pool, in terms of understanding the full ecosystem of an organization as well, in addition to everything that you shared, which, Tom agrees with you wholeheartedly. I would say that it's like anything, everything we do, it's continuously improving. So the two sales courses, one is direct to consumer sales, and the second is B2B sales. And so they're constantly, framing out ideal customer profile as a mechanism for making, having efficient practices. They constantly work and practice on how do you overcome no's. And it's not no now, it's yes later. All the things that I know that, Steve, well, and Emily knows well. It's just reps. It's reps,
Yeah.
it's reps, it's reps. And the thing that I see personally is that when our students come out of the sales courses, they come out different people because they're more confident, they're more concise in their language, they know how to present, they're more pensive in terms of what they say and how they say it. And so not only is it good training for the functional job requirements of sales, I actually view it as foundational to our professional preparation ethos. Like the sales courses build the character, they
Yep.
build the understanding of where revenue comes from. There's more empathy. They may not enter sales, but they know the challenges and the rigor and the demands of it. So it's going quite well. The other thing that we do is that we run an accelerator program, 2 cohorts a year. And the accelerator program is in partnership with an organization in Nashville called GrowthX. And the program is we take 15 Western New York startups, and the Institute, as well as GrowthX, runs them through the 16-week sales program. It's a B2B, mostly tech sales program. And our students get to observe real time all of these scenarios and situations from which these early stage founders are grappling with ideal customer profile, target market fit, what is truly the go-to-market strategy rather than just, praying and spraying. And so they see it in real time in addition to the courses.
Yeah, I think that's great. And to your point, even if they aren't going into sales, in my opinion, every position, and as a human being, you have to be able to sell something.
Yeah.
You're
Yeah.
selling constantly. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
Another thing you pointed out, which I did not know actually until you just told me, but I think it's phenomenal. And we were just on a client call this morning about this project management course. I think that is another very well-rounded position that you have to know that kind of the ecosystem of a business. You have to be able to take control of a call. I think that is a wonderful course that I did not know about. Can you speak to that a bit? Because I didn't realize that, and I think that's
Yep,
awesome.
it was actually, I'll take I don't take a lot of credit for much, but it's the one thing that, having spent 10 years in tech, that a lot of money and a lot of success is predicated on how well a project is run and
Yeah.
managed. And if you don't have empathy for the PM process, and if you can't lead a project, then your ceiling is lower
Yep.
in terms of what you can do and how you can do it. And so we actually collaborate with Syracuse on this particular course. And when they graduate from the course, they're actually micro-credentialed in PM, foundations of PM, both from the Institute as well as Syracuse. And so that has
Oh,
value
that's
in and of
great.
itself. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. All right, then my other question, away from the courses and how I like that they're practical versus theory, is that I think from a macro level, there's an issue, as you're pointing out eloquently, that these non-special degrees just aren't getting the ROI that the kids need. And it's turning into bigger issues for us nationally, and it's hurting universities.
Yep.
I think it's pretty public. I'm not saying anything too opinionated to say that most universities enrollments are down right now.
Yep.
And what Tom and you guys are doing over there, I think is great. I think it's the future of higher ed. That's coming from me, obviously, being opinionated. But can you speak to that? How you're kind of seeing these degrees and kids spending a lot of money taking out loans and coming out and not being able to get the jobs that have the income
Yeah.
they need to pay off these loans, and how you guys are definitely set up differently to make sure these kids are coming out of college not in debt and with the skills
Yeah.
to be successful.
Yeah. There's like three or four things that have informed our perspective on this. And first and foremost, is that I'm 54, and when I was in high school, the majority of us had jobs in high school. Like that was just part of growing
Yeah.
up in the rural part of the Finger Lakes. And most of us had more than one job, right? So you start working when you're 13 or 14, and that's just part of who you are, and you grow as a result of that. Work at a young age teaches you a lot about the world. It teaches you about the importance of on time, accountability, dealing with conflict, establishing relationships, evaluating an organization, and trying to find ways to improve yourself and improve the organization for promotion. Like work is good. Like it's one of those things that I think a lot of us probably have taken for granted in terms of what makes us happy and successful. When you look at the number of young people that work now, it's about 31% nationally under the age of 19 that have ever held a job. So we went
Wow.
from 75%, back in the 70s and 80s to 31, 32% now. And the challenge with that is that development for a large number of individuals has never been allowed to happen. And so we take a group of young people who have either had no work experience or limited work experience. We tell them, you go to college and you get prepared for a job. And so you go to school, and most colleges and universities do not have policies and procedures that also prepare you for work. It's optional to go to class. It's optional how you present yourself. It's optional, whether or not you do your work. It's optional, and there's consequences, don't get me wrong. but it's not the same as if you're going to work or you're working for someone. And up until, recently, a lot of us knew how to work. We knew the responsibilities of work. We went to college, we got requisite knowledge, and then we went into the workforce combining those two things. Okay, that was the majority of the American population. Now we're at a point where a lot of young people are entering college with the hope that the college is going to prepare them for work, and it never does. In some ways, it actually lowers the bar in terms of their personal expectation. Now they're smart, okay? They know a lot, but you got to be able to solve someone's problem, and you can only solve someone's problem by doing all the things that we just talked about. So we looked at the Institute and asked ourselves, how do we ensure that we don't recreate the problem of what I just described? And so in many ways, we have to teach people what it means to be responsible employees as a part of their educational experience. As an example, we have a very, very strict guideline about punctuality. If you're not in the building by 8:45, we lock the door and you can try again tomorrow. And every cohort, it's painful for the first, 2 to 3 days, but then they get it. And they're like, okay, I have to be on time. That's an expectation of me to receive this wonderful benefit from Tom. The other part of it is you have to dress like you're going to work. You can't dress like you're going to watch a high school football game. Like, that's just not what Wilmac would expect of an employee. And so we have a dress code that is very, we just actually had a big meeting about it, and that we can't let 5%, 10% not adhere to it, because it dilutes and waters down the expectation for everyone else. So we're actually ratcheting it up. So to answer, it's a long-winded answer, but part of what we do is that we have this really innovative curriculum. It's very pragmatic, as you say. It's skills-based, it's knowledge-based, it's focused. And that is really, really a big driver of the success so far. But I actually would argue that all of these cultural expectations are the distinctive part of what we do. Because there's a lot of smart people there that are underemployed, and it's not because they're not smart and they don't know how to work.
Yep.
And that's the part of it.
Do you, another kind of macro level, you guys feel like your timing is pretty spot on due to, some of these smaller liberal arts, maybe not a huge sporting school, which again, shout out for the Syracuse University breakfast the other week. Thank you very much. That was awesome.
That was great. Yeah, thanks for coming over.
It seems like you guys are in a great spot to take advantage of the general public finally coming to realization that you maybe don't need a full-blown 4-year degree to get to where you want to get to, and that these smaller universities might be, I don't want to say shutting down, but might be struggling for the next 5 to 10 years, and you guys are sitting there as a beautiful option to all these kids. And it's not only the kids realizing it, I think it's parents in general. When I was growing up, it was like, if you didn't go to a 4-year school, you're kind of a failure. And I think that's an awful message, and that's a societal change. But it seems like you guys are sitting in a great spot to be the option for this next generation.
There's a lot of things about Tom Golisano that I admire. One of them, just kind of learning about his whole history, is that he's just great at timing.
Yeah.
If you look at everything that he has done throughout his life, it's been predicated on providing the right solution at the right time. And I don't think this is any different, to your point. The other thing about is that there'll be the majority of young people, particularly, say 50, 60%, college is probably the best thing for them because they know what they're looking for. Maybe they play a sport like you did, Steve, and that's cool. It's the other 40%, or the 50, depending on kind of where the ratios are, that I think that we're the best option for. Like, if you don't know that you can afford a 4-year school, or you're a little impatient, or you just don't care about things like psychology or sociology, and you could care less about them, you're never going to care, and you want business, then I think we're an ideal solution. And the other thing is that Tom pays the majority of the costs.
Yeah.
I mean, our cost is $8,900 a year. We expend about 50 grand per head right now, per year to educate someone. We take care of all the books. We give them a brand new laptop. I mean, it's about the greatest deal on the planet. And the timing is perfect, to your point.
Can you talk about how you go about getting your name out nationally and recruiting kids and how that process works?
Yeah, it's different. Like if you were at Geneseo or St. Bonaventure, where I went, and Emily, you went to Roberts, I think you had mentioned, like the admissions offices, their lifeblood is buying SAT takers,
Yeah.
their names, and then going and visiting high schools and doing college fairs and doing events. And it's a little bit of a, being in the competitive environment at the given time when the customer is looking to understand the options. Because we're business only, and because we require more thought to understand what we're doing, because we are novel and what we're new, our success actually has been more predicated on going into business classes in high schools and helping a much more aggregated market. Usually, if you're taking business classes in high school, you have some familiarity and some interest in business,
Yep.
and helping them understand that, if you're interested in business post-secondary, we're a really great option. So when we go to high schools, we don't typically go to the guidance offices. We just try and get into the business classes, which is a distinctive part of it. The other thing is that, and this has been a great work by our media team, is that the public is interested in alternatives right now, to your point, Steve. Like there's all this kind of banter around what can we do differently. And so when they hear about us, they're pretty open-minded to having us come on either national or regional, programs. We've had a lot of great placements in earned media. That's been super helpful as well.
Yeah, I was gonna speak or ask you to speak more about that, Ian. Like this path that you guys are treading is so very unknown and unheard of before. Like, how has that been from your experience being that leader? And then also getting the trust of and buy-in from students and your staff. How
Yeah.
has that process been?
I mean, just like any startup, we have a very, very specific ideal customer profile that we've learned is there from, we're going into our fifth cohort now. And the persona, if you will, would sound something like this, and this will sound familiar because we just talked about it, is that most of our students worked in high school. They've worked 15, 20 hours in high school. They've been working since they were 15 or 16, and they're pragmatists by their upbringing. Most of our families are kind of middle income families, dual income. One's a teacher, maybe one's a police officer. Just super mid-America type of a population that we seem to be most attractive to. It's also a family dynamic typically that is very financially well managed. They're debt adverse as much as they can be. And so when they look at options about, expending middle income salaries not being enough and they have to take on debt, they're looking for another option to get a pathway to an economically positive type of an environment. So rather than Roberts or Geneseo or Bonnie's kind of going out to the masses, we're getting very, very narrow in terms of the early adopters of what we're doing. I will say that even in 2 years, we see evidence of a little bit more mainstream. We have a couple of students this fall that are coming from Allendale, Columbia, which their price tag is north of 28 grand. But they're coming to us because they want what we're doing, which is exactly what we want, rather than being just an alternative. We're starting to hear more about, well, this is the type of education I want, independent of what it costs. So I think it's going to take a little time, but we're on our way.
Love it. No, it wouldn't be the Wilmac Wire without talking about AI in some capacity, as our listeners know. And the AI Innovation Hub, I was looking back in my notes today at like meetings and that sort of thing, and saw that you guys formally launched it in October 2024. So it's almost been going for a year. Can you speak more to kind of the concept behind it? How has it evolved? Was it originally in that plan that Tom Golisano thought through a few years ago? Like, speak more to that, please.
Yeah, it was one of the benefits that we have when we're kind of untethered from federal accreditation is that we can move fast. And so we were, 6 months in, and the world got different fast, as you know, more than anyone. And so this whole idea that artificial intelligence was going to be a very important input into business. It was going to reshape enterprises. There will be successes and failures, based on the technology. Like that just hit us on the head like an anvil. And so we have a board member who really, really pushed us into this thinking differently, and thank God, goodness he did. And so we moved pretty fast. We needed a space that we felt like could handle huge data sets, millions upon millions of records if people are going to build their own, LLMs. And so we constructed that. We constructed a space where if a student wanted to build out their own agentic AI, avatar, whatever the term is now, we have a light controlled and sound controlled environment for them to test that out. And then we have 2 employees that are kind of like internal consultants and coaches. And so they are, responsible for ensuring that not only do they know what's going on in the business world, but they can, bring it into the folds of the AI Innovation Hub. And I would say that of our current students, we have like 4 or 5 that are just I'm 100% confident they're going to command huge, huge salaries when they're done, because they're already coding and creating and, data cleansing and doing all the things that people seem to want more of as a result of that. And then we made it curricular so that you can't graduate from here without at least knowing, again, how to code, how to manage data, and how to begin building your own, data lakes for some of this activity.
Yeah, I think that's impressive. I don't know. I'm getting mixed messages, I would say, from other universities on how they are jumping in or not jumping in. But from the universities that seem to have some tendency to move forward with it, they're all waiting for state accreditations and that stuff to even implement it. I do think, as we've spoken about, it's important. It's going to be the future. It's going to move quicker than anyone thinks, and anyone not moving forward with it is going to end up getting left behind. So I think it's super important that you guys are doing this. I'm glad that you guys are doing it. One of the other things that I think that you guys figured out quick, and I think it's a good recruiting method, but it's also gets your name out there and gets you guys out into the public, especially in the Western New York, Rochester. But you guys are able to bring probably the best speakers that I've seen in all of Western upstate New York, basically, on campus to talk about leadership, to talk about business. You've had a few different themes. It's been great. Are you guys going to actively continue to do that? Is it difficult? Is it a difficult process? I'm sure that logistically it's got to be a challenge. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Before you answer that, Steve, were you just talking about yourself there since you spoke at Golisano?
Oh, no.
I'm just kidding.
One of our favorites.
I was more speaking about the big ones, not those.
Yeah, Steve, you were great, by the way. It's actually, I should have mentioned this. It was one of the things that Tom felt very strongly about. Once a week, someone's coming in and sharing truth about how the real world works. It's really that simple.
Yeah.
A lot of our students have gotten great job opportunities as a result of practicing networking every week with our speakers, which obviously is super important. To your question, is it a lot of work? It's a tremendous amount of work.
Yeah.
To find quality people generally, whether they're brilliant or they're great presenters, just find quality people that you trust to put in front of your most treasured asset every week is a heavy lift.
Yeah.
Our guy, John Mordacey, he does an amazing job with this. He's a savant at it. He's constantly trying to introduce himself to people like Steve and Emily. You've been in the place a lot, and it can't stop because it's the thing Tom cares most about. And to his credit, if Tom feels like we laid an egg, he'll let us know, and
Yeah.
it's not because they're not a good, speaker or presenter, but maybe there wasn't alignment to actually what we're trying to share. Um, so
Ye-
it's a heavy lift.
Yeah, and definitely a shout out to John. He's great. He puts himself out there.
Yep.
I
Big
think
time.
he's done a great job. He's great at speaking when he gets up there as well.
Yeah.
You guys are all, especially when you have some of the more famous people in that you guys are navigating through. So I think you guys are doing a wonderful job with that.
Thank you. Yeah, and there'll be more. So this train will keep on coming, and and the other thing we are changing a little bit, and we should have done this earlier, and it's my fault, is that we were very protective around speaking from experience. We thought that this is kind of a benefit of membership, but the reality is that we should have as many people as humanly possible come in every Wednesday, and so they'll be on our new website, which launches in a couple of weeks. We actually are going to make it a public domain offering where if someone wants to come in and be a part of speaking from experience for a given Wednesday, as long as they have a good reason, it's not just for the free coffee, then we're going to allow that to happen.
That's awesome. I cannot wait to see the new website. My marketing brain was just like, ooh.
Thank you.
But yeah, I have to say, every time you've sent over that invite to an event, like I know Steve and I were at the panel discussion with Tim Tebow
Yeah.
and the Sabres coach, whose name is escaping my mind right now. But we walked away from that so impressed. And then also just the amount of people you had in the room, like who are bought in, and just the way you're expanding that awareness about the Institute through the speaking from experience is just a great strategy.
Thank you, Emily. One of the things, and actually, I would love both your perspectives on this, is that we hear a lot that one of the things that Rochester as a business community does not do enough of is coming together. Like, in Buffalo, it seems like they do more of that type of stuff. Like, I think 43 North is a big part of it, probably, but we almost kind of view ourselves as the aggregator of the business community at some level because the space is very good at that. But we want to do more of it. Like we want to be the place where, if Steve wants to, do an event and, talk with potential customers, he thinks about us first. And, if other people, entrepreneurs want to get together and focus on a given topic, they think of us first. And the more the business community can think of us as a home base, I think that actually that'll have a lot of network effect in a really positive way. We can be pretty disparate sometimes, and I think that this hopefully can mitigate some of that.
Yeah, I love that. And I think it goes back to kind of what you were talking about within the curriculum you offer for the students. Like, I think I see at least five Golisano Institute students at every networking event
That's
that I'm
great.
at.
Thank you. That's awesome.
And like, always impressed. Like, I think to myself and my college days and how I went around the career fair and wouldn't talk to anyone. I just take the swag off the tables, like to put them in a position where they need to be comfortable. Like, it just puts them so far ahead and more mature in that professionalism aspect. Now on the other side of recruiting entry level and students for internships and being like, okay, yeah, personality wise, like they know how to work a room, they know how to have a conversation with an adult. So, yeah, I think that's just a great part of it. Um,
Yeah, to that point, I think you mentioned networking briefly, Ian, but that's another practice skill. I
Yeah.
mean, it is a very practice skill to put yourself out there and continue to get better and better and more comfortable. And I don't know if college kids do it enough. So you kind of pushing the kids to do that, I think is important. I think that's great. And from a, business, Rochester business perspective, you're right. I don't think we all get together enough. I think you guys do a good job. I think the chamber is also trying to do
Of course.
a good
Yeah.
job at it, but there's not enough of it. There's not, in my opinion, enough people looking at the Rochester companies and coming and helping everybody grow together. There's too many people looking like who can we bring in from the outside? What company can we bring in from the outside? So I think what you guys are doing is great. To that point, I know we're running out of time here, but I wanted to kind of get your view on what AI is doing to the entry level positions. There's a lot of kids coming out of college that may have degrees from top 4-year schools. That in the next 3 to 5 years, there's certain positions that AI is just going to be sitting there and can work 24 hours a day, isn't it's talking back, any way you want to put it, it's going to be there. How is that going to affect the universities? They're already kind of struggling with enrollment, and obviously we spoke about earlier that it's so expensive and the ROI isn't what it used to be. And then you add AI. What is the next 5 to 10 years? What are the typical universities we speak about? Geneseo, Roberts, Bonnie's, Syracuse. How's that landscape going to look? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
No, it's a great question. I mean, I don't. I mean, my sense is, at the highest level, and you know more about this than I do, Steve, and Emily, you as well, is that. Let me back up. I used to implement big ERP systems as my work. I did it for about a decade, and at the time, those big ERP systems were the innovative technology. Getting centralized data, learning from, consolidated data sets. And in those projects, which were incredibly costly and big stakes on them, they were people projects. The success of the adoption was predicated on the open-mindedness and the ability of the organization to think differently and be different. Those that weren't failed, and those that were took advantage of the promise of that investment. I see the next chapter of this, same principles, like same guidelines, but just more complicated and requiring more of people. Like if you can't, I'm going to sound preachy, but I think it's somewhat accurate. Like as a business leader, if you can't be a really great leader and kind of take the fear out of this and take the idea of a better world, create the idea of a better world, and lose your ego and be a learn-it-all and not a know-it-all, then you're not going to be successful in implementing agentic solutions or things that remove people out of steps based on ownership. It's not going to happen. The economic promise is just too big. So I see it all about people. I think the best organizations that'll take advantage of this will have the best people, and that will be the deciding factor of it. Best cultures, best trust, within those organizations. And to your question about new grads, I think that organizations that act with high levels of trust, high levels of innovation, high levels of good people will find those recent grads that strike that chord. They're like them. And those that aren't are going to be pushed aside a little bit further. So I'm not sure that answers your question. The other thing I have noticed, and this is from personal experience as well, is that people are putting hiring decisions on pause generally. Like, it's a little bit wait and see, I think, for many organizations.
Yep, definitely.
Yeah.
All right. We've passed our 40 minutes that I promised you, Ian.
That's great. Thank you. It's been fun.
Last question before we wrap. Is there anything exciting project-wise, initiative-wise going on at Golisano Institute that you'd like to share with our listeners?
Yeah, I mean, it's the thing that, and Steve and I had an exchange about it earlier, and he's totally right. But we have this reality that it's a people, training process. I mean, we want to be the go-to place that builds, AI leadership, and it takes business knowledge and it takes tools knowledge, but most importantly, it takes a mindset that you have confidence to understand the tools, you have confidence enough to understand the inefficiencies or the opportunities in your organization, and the people and the knowledge that we provide get you over both those humps. And it's tough to do unless we're together. The current AI in business 1-year program, I think, is rich. I think it's going to produce the type of people that we described, but not many organizations can free up, 15, 17 hours a week of an employee to make it happen. So the thing that we're moving forward, and we'll have a robust cohort this fall, but we got to figure out a way to use AI to actually deliver an AI leader. And that's going to take new thinking and new thoughts, but we'll get there.
Yeah, and we're grateful that you trust us to be involved in that conversation. So appreciate you coming on the podcast today and joining. Steve, you got anything else before I close this out?
No, Ian, appreciate it. Hopefully I shouldn't even say hopefully. This will not be your last time on this wire. We hope this wire goes on for a while. And thanks for being one of the first guests as we're just kind of getting this going. Thanks for your patience. Always great to talk to you. I'm sure we'll be over at the Institute at a date very soon.
Great. Thanks to both of you, and thanks to Wilmac. You guys have been great.
Yeah, of course. All right, to our listeners, you can connect with Ian on LinkedIn. His name is Ian Mortimer. And to learn more about Golisano, you can go to www.golisanoinstitute.org. I'm going to be checking often to see when that new site drops. All right, Ian, thanks for your time. Like we kind of talked about throughout this, we truly appreciate your partnership with Wilmac. It's just been really awesome to see it grow and develop these past few years. It feels like it's been well established now for a long time, but love seeing you guys act quickly. And like I said, kudos to you, to John Mordacey, to Stephanie, Kathy, Nate, just the entire team over at Golisano. It's always a pleasure seeing you all. So yeah, that wraps up this episode of the Wilmac Wire. Ian, thanks for your time. We'll be in touch soon.
Thank you.
Thanks, Ian.
All right. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to the Wilmac Wire. If you liked today's conversation, make sure to subscribe wherever you get your podcasts, or watch full episodes on our YouTube channel. You can also learn more about Wilmac Technologies and our work in customer interaction technology at wilmactech.com. We'll be back soon with more conversations with the drivers, those shaping our industry and those building right here in Western New York. See you next time.